Viewer advisory. This video contains rapid-fire image cuts that may not be everybody's cup of tea, or coffee, or whatever caffeinated fuel is keeping you operational. Also, be prepared. There will be visual puns. Lots of them. The good, the bad, and why would you even say that? And yes, fully loaded, unapologetic 80s dad jokes. Delivered by a certified senior who grew up when LOL was something you actually did out loud. Younger viewers, you've been warned. But also, welcome. Think of this as a cultural field trip to a time before Wi-Fi, when our humor had no buffering, just consequences. Proceed with caution. Serpentor, the Cobra Emperor, forged from the DNA of history's greatest conquerors, warlords, and kings. A single entity engineered and designed for one purpose: to rule the world. A concept so extreme, so completely unhinged that it wouldn't take just a mega mind, but an equally twisted one to even imagine it. And the man responsible? Yeah, that makes sense. Because, of course, a shirtless, muscle-bound ex-dentist with a curly mustache and a monocle would be the first thing that comes to mind. When G.I. Joe, a Real American Hero, launched in 1982, the idea was pretty straightforward. A military-themed toy line of modern-day soldiers, basically high-end Green Army men, armed with bullets, tanks, cannons, and missiles, going up against a somewhat grounded terrorist organization. But it didn't take long before Hasbro realized that sticking too close to realism wasn't nearly as fun. And so, the line started to loosen up. Characters got more colorful, vehicles got more ambitious, and once the cartoon rolled in, things really kicked into another gear. Suddenly, Cobra Commander wasn't just fighting battles. He was using mass devices, weather dominators, and fatal fluffies against our Real American heroes. And just like that, the line between military action and full-on science fiction pretty much disappeared. Now, while the G.I. Joe, a Real American Hero comics written by Larry Hama leaned more into the gritty, realistic side of war, they still weren't completely free of sci-fi. Early on, we got introduced to the Cobra scientist Dr. Venom and his creation, the Brainwave scanner, a device that could wipe memories, implant new ones, and basically rewrite who a person is. It's definitely out there, but still kinda, sorta realistic enough to feel like an actual threat. That said, Dr. Venom didn't stick around for long. He was a comic-only character, and eventually, he got killed to keep that more serious, high-stakes tone intact. But even then, he kind of set the stage for something bigger, because for a group like Cobra, completely obsessed with control and world domination, the idea of an evil doctor dude who could mess with people's minds was just too good to let go. If anything, it felt like something they'd want to explore even further. And that's exactly what happened. In 1986, Cobra brought in a literal new kind of doctor. Someone who wouldn't just push the limits of science, but blow right past them. Because this guy wouldn't just be known for being smart. He'd be known for bending minds to his will. Now, the original idea conceived by Hasbro was actually much darker. This guy was meant to be more of an Inquisitor-type character, basically Cobra's go-to torture specialist. But that idea was a little too intense and probably a bit too controversial for a kid's toy line. So instead, they made a pivot to something a bit more wholesome, the classic mad scientist. And that shift was key. Cobra still got their chief interrogator, just without the real-world baggage. Instead of physical torture, everything became rooted in sci-fi, brainwave manipulation, electromagnetic conditioning, and good old-fashioned mind control. And thus, Dr. Mindbender was born as Dr. Brian Binder, an accomplished orthodontist and by all accounts a genuinely kind and compassionate man. An individual who cared truly, madly, deeply about his patients. So much so that he wanted to eliminate the pain and anxiety that came with dental procedures. But instead of relying on traditional anesthetics, Binder turned to neuroscience. convinced that pain could be intercepted and neutralized directly in the brain. I don't know about you, but laughing gas sounds perfectly fine to me. But regardless, he built a machine, one designed to relieve pain through localized brainwave stimulation. And in what is always a completely foolproof decision, he chose to test it on himself. And yeah, it did not go well. The experiment went catastrophically wrong. The machine malfunctioned, causing severe brain damage and triggering a complete psychological break. Binder's empathy was wiped out, replaced with vanity, deceit, and full-blown megalomania. Along with, apparently, a newfound appreciation for going around shirtless with a cape. Abandoning his practice, he repurposed his invention into something far more dangerous, a weaponized brainwave scanner, a device capable of reducing even the strongest minds into helpless shells, rewriting memories, overriding free will, and enforcing absolute obedience. As noted in his file card written by Larry Hama, there's a chilling level of self-awareness to it all. Dr. Mindbender doesn't think he's deluded, he feels he used to be. Now that he has seen the light, or the dark if you will, he feels it is his personal mission to bring the miracle of thought control to each and every one of you. And just like that, what started as a mission to ease pain became something far more sinister, a cautionary tale of scientific hubris. A man once dedicated to healing, now obsessed with control, and one of the most psychologically dangerous threats the G.I. Joe team would ever face. And boy, did he ever look the part. As a kid, when I first heard Cobra was getting a new evil doctor, I immediately pictured someone like Dr. Venom, you know, lab coat dude and all that. Never in my wildest dreams did I think that we'd get this. A bald, thick, curly mustachioed guy wearing high-polished steel suspenders strapped over a completely bare, heavily muscled chest, tight purple pants, matching wrist gauntlets, high black boots, a large silver buckled belt sitting above an equally shiny silver codpiece, a flowing black cape, and just to make sure we really knew he was a genius, a monocle. It's a bold look, especially for a character who's supposed to be a scientist, a role like I mentioned earlier we usually associated with frail lab coat wearing intellectuals. But that's what makes Dr. Mindbender stand out. His design feels less like a traditional scientist and more like something inspired by Eugene Sandow, that old school strongman physique. Pair that with the monocle, this classic symbol of aristocratic intelligence, and you get a really strange but effective mix because visually it tells you everything you need to know about the guy. Mindbender isn't some desk-bound intellectual hiding behind his machines. He's a full-blown megalomaniac. Megalomaniac. Someone who craves total control and makes sure you see it, mentally and physically. It flips the usual frail scientist trope on its head and turns him into something far more intimidating within Cobra's ranks. And also makes it very clear, for all his brilliance, this dude is batshit crazy. Speaking of which, after his debut in G.I. Joe Real American Hero comics, originally under the rather meh name of Dr. Brainwave, Dr. Mindbender quickly took over as Cobra's top scientist, a role previously held by the late Dr. Venom. And he didn't waste any time. Aside from refining Venom's brainwave scanner, he went on to create the Battle Android Troopers, or BATS, one of Cobra's most impactful additions to the battlefield. Expendable, heavily armed robotic soldiers that completely changed how Cobra fought the war against G.I. Joe. And more importantly, they reflected Mindbender's core philosophy that human soldiers, even elite Cobra Vipers, are flawed. They hesitate. They feel fear. They think for themselves. So his solution? Remove the human element entirely. Replace it with programmable loyalty, built-in weaponry, and cold, emotionless efficiency. And of course, Being robots meant that the Joes could blow them up to pieces without turning the comics, or especially the cartoons, into something they couldn't actually air. But as big as the bats were, Mindbender's defining achievement in the Marvel run was something else entirely: the creation of Serpentor, the Cobra Emperor. Recognizing that Cobra Commander's constant failures, ego, and infighting were holding the organization back, Mindbender came up with a solution that was equal parts genius and completely insane: a genetic engineering project to create the ultimate leader. Teaming up with Destro, Mindbender launched a global operation to recover DNA from history's greatest conquerors. Figures like Julius Caesar, Napoleon Bonaparte, Attila the Hun, Hannibal, and Genghis Khan. The result? A genetically engineered ruler, grown and accelerated into adulthood, Serpentor. And just like that, the balance of power within Cobra shifted overnight. Mindbender didn't just create a weapon, he created a king, and acting as both architect and kingmaker, he temporarily pushed Cobra Commander aside and proved that his science could literally shape the leadership of a global terrorist organization. At its core, the whole storyline plays like a dark reflection of the fascist obsession with the great man theory of history, wherein Mindbender believed that absolute genetic perfection, divorced from morality, was the key to global conquest. Anyway, with that being said, you can't keep a good snake down. Despite being unceremoniously kicked to the curb, Cobra Commander returns to power thanks to a victory in a brief Cobra civil war, where Serpentor ultimately falls, and for his role in all of that betrayal, Dr. Mindbender gets the Freighter. And by gets the Freighter, I mean he, along with several other Cobra operatives deemed as traitors, is sealed inside a landlocked freighter, buried under a volcano, and left to die, which they do in true nightmare fashion. Mindbender and the others eventually die from botulism inside that sealed container. Fortunately for Mindbender, this is the comics, and as the saying goes, aside from Uncle Ben, no one really stays dead in comics. And so sure enough, even in G.I. Joe, death isn't exactly permanent. Mindbender is eventually brought back, cloned, and revived by Cobra Commander himself. Which, when you think about it, is kind of the ultimate irony. The guy who mastered genetic manipulation is now a genetic duplicate, a copy, forced to serve the very man who ordered his original, very brutal execution. Sucks to be Mindbender, but hey, at least he's alive. Sort of. And speaking of alive, have you ever felt like your figures look kinda dead from the lack of detail? Well, now you can bring them back to life with Toy Hacks. Right now, I've been checking out their upgrade label set for the classified Cobra flight pod. You know, the Trouble Bubble, along with the Televipers, and I've gotta say, these weren't even on my must-have list before. But after seeing what Toy Hacks did with them, now I kinda want them, just to hacks them up. We're talking extra panel lines, warning labels, and screen-inspired details that make the whole setup feel way more complete and, well, alive. And like all Toy Hacks sets, it's super easy to apply. Just peel, stick, done. No trouble or air bubbles at all. See what I did there? If you're looking to level up your Trouble Bubble or Televipers, check out toyhacks.com. Links in the description below. Big thanks to Toy Hacks for supporting the channel. And now, back to bending it like Mindbender. Anyway, after the original Marvel run ended, a new company, Devil's Due Publishing, picked up the reins, and instead of rebooting things, they chose to continue right where Marvel left off. And as far as Dr. Mindbender was concerned, it was pretty much more of the same, just turned up a notch. Mindbender goes right back to what he does best, resurrecting Serpentor. This time, he teams up with a new cult-like group called the Coil, and because apparently one genetically engineered emperor wasn't enough, he creates multiple child clones of Serpentor, presumably to sort out a proper succession plan or something. And just to make things even more interesting, one of those clones ends up becoming the newly appointed field commander of G.I. Joe. Yeah. General Philip Ray, a new character introduced by Devil's Due, turns out to be secretly one of Serpentor's clones. Ray had been physically altered by Mindbender himself, with his memories and personality rewritten by an equally unsettling Cobra operative, Crystal Ball, to completely hide his true origin. And the result? A deeply embedded operative placed at the highest levels of the US military, arguably Mindbender's most insidious creation, and proof of just how patient, calculated, and downright terrifying he could be over the long game. But even with all that, some things never change. After briefly taking control of Cobra once again, Serpentor is, once again, taken down by Cobra Commander, quite literally getting his ass kicked down a waterfall. Mindbender is captured shortly after, and despite trying to save his own skin by offering up his latest weapon of mass destruction, the Tempest, he meets a much more direct end this time. No landlocked freighter, no slow demise, just a cold shot to the back, courtesy of Cobra Commander. And an unmarked grave, ironically in the same potter's field that his predecessor, Dr. Venom, was buried as well. But before he died, Mindbender's last act isn't one of redemption, but of revenge. In his last moments, he helps G.I. Joe disable the Tempest, not to save the world, but to spite the man who betrayed him. And with that, the Doctor dies. And this time, it sticks. No cloning, no resurrection, just a definitive end to one of Cobra's most dangerous minds. At least, in the pages of Devil's Due, a G.I. Joe universe that would eventually be deemed as non-canon when IDW Publishing took over. Now, if you ask me, I don't feel that on a whole IDW did much with Dr. Mindbender story-wise, which is a shame because their take on the Mad Doctor was possibly the most chillingly evil version yet. A complete reinvention. Gone was the campy, shirtless, suspenders, and monocle crazy dentist we all knew, and in his place was something way more realistic and way more disturbing. This version of Mindbender wasn't played for laughs or obsessed with raising emperors. He was more of a reflection of the darker side of real-world science. In this continuity, Mindbender is revealed to be Dr. Armand Singh, a brilliant scientist whose career stretches across some of the most controversial moments in modern history. Singh is shown working alongside J. Robert Oppenheimer during the Manhattan Project, even contributing ideas that helped push the development of the atomic bomb forward. While other scientists began struggling with the moral weight of what they were creating, Singh had no doubts. He saw their hesitation as weakness. Where others felt fear, he felt pride, and it only gets worse from there. After the war, Singh becomes heavily involved in the CIA's MK-Ultra program, diving headfirst into mind control experiments with zero regards for ethics. He starts with animals, then moves on to human test subjects, often using prisoners who had no choice in the matter. In some cases, he even travels to remote areas under the guise of offering medical aid, only to run deadly experiments on unsuspecting children. He performs invasive brain surgeries on fully conscious patients just to observe how their bodies and minds break down. He tests dangerous drugs on pregnant women without hesitation. And through it all, there's no remorse, no second thoughts, just a constant drive to push boundaries, no matter the cost. Ironically, for someone that brilliant, the thing that frustrates him the most isn't failure. It's limitation, government rules, ethical oversight, the idea that certain things just shouldn't be done. Those are the things he can't stand. All of that frustration with rules, ethics, and being told no eventually pushes Singh straight into the arms of Cobra, where he is given unlimited funding, zero oversight, and complete freedom to explore whatever twisted ideas he wants. No questions asked. In return, he signs on and takes on the slightly ridiculous codename Dr. Mindbender. This is easily the darkest, most grounded take on the character. He's no longer just a colorful, over-the-top villain. He feels like something much more closer to reality. Like I said, a reflection of real-world scientists who pushed boundaries without regard for consequences. and what can happen when intelligence is completely divorced from morality. Yikes. Yeah, I don't know about you, but that got really dark really fast. So, how about we lighten things up a bit and head back into more familiar, friendlier territory? The cartoon. Because for a lot of fans, it's that goofy, over-the-top version of Dr. Mindbender that is the default. In the Sunbow animated series, Mindbender is actually pretty close to his Marvel counterpart. He's still Cobra's chief scientist and interrogator, but he's also way more hands-on, constantly influencing the direction of the organization. Right from the start, he's arrogant, dismissive, and not exactly shy about calling out Cobra Commander, who, in return, lovingly refers to him as Fender Bender. And in Mindbender's eyes, Cobra's constant failures, that's not on him. That's bad leadership. Which leads directly into one of the biggest storylines in the Season 2 miniseries, Arise, Serpentor, Arise. Teaming up with Destro and the Crimson Twins, Tomax and Xamot, Mindbender once again sets out to create a better leader for Cobra. And yeah, you know how this goes, he creates Serpentor. But unlike the comics where Serpentor is actually a pretty competent leader, the cartoon version? Not so much. Once again, Mindbender uses DNA from history's greatest warriors, but unfortunately misses one key ingredient, Sun Tzu, the guy known for patience and strategy. Instead, he substitutes the loss with Sergeant Slaughter, and the result is a leader who's powerful and the master of the Cobra Clutch, but also impulsive, loud, and way more prone to rage than strategy. It's a perfect example of Mindbender's biggest flaw. His ambition tends to outrun his control. And just when you think that that's his crowning achievement, the show pulls the rug out from under him. As it turns out, the whole idea for Serpentor wasn't even his. It was planted in his mind by Globulus, the ruler of Cobra Law, using something called a psychic motivator. So yeah, sorry Fender Bender, not exactly your masterpiece. Now, aside from the main cartoon, there are a couple more animated versions worth mentioning. In G.I. Joe Spy Troops and G.I. Joe Valor vs. Venom, a more meek and more submissive Mindbender takes things in a very different direction with the Venom program, turning humans into animal hybrids. And the end result? He transforms General Hawk into Venomous Maximus, an insanely powerful creature who ends up taking over Cobra, forcing everyone, including the Joes, to deal with the mess Mindbender created. And then you've got G.I. Joe Renegades, where Mindbender is reimagined as Dr. Brian Bender, a much younger take on the character. He's still an outlaw scientist wanted for illegal human experimentation, and he's working on two main goals: creating an unstoppable army through his Bio Viper program, and helping Cobra Commander achieve immortality. Throughout the series, he keeps pushing the limits, experimenting on Tomax and Xamot against their will to exploit their psychic link, creating even more dangerous hybrid creatures like the Sewer Viper, and building in fail-safes that can wipe everything out if things get out of control. It all points to the same thing. He's not just brilliant, he's paranoid, controlling, and always thinking a few steps ahead. And at the same time, his relationship with Cobra Commander shows another side of him. He might be arrogant and completely unhinged, but he's also smart enough to know when to protect himself. When things go south, he doesn't fight, he negotiates. He reminds Cobra Commander exactly how valuable he is, especially when immortality is on the line. Because at the end of the day, no matter the version, Dr. Mindbender always finds a way to stay useful, and more importantly, stay alive. Speaking of which, the last version of Mindbender I want to briefly touch on is the live-action take from the G.I. Joe The Rise of Cobra movie. Played by Kevin J. O'Connor, this version is probably the least impressive, but still worth mentioning for the role he plays. Here, Mindbender is a Cobra-affiliated scientist specializing in mind control and advanced tech, and his biggest contribution is serving as a mentor to Rex Lewis, the dude who would eventually become Cobra Commander. Through that mentorship, he introduces Rex to nanotechnology. And if you watch the movie, you know just how destructive those green little buggers are. making him less of a frontline villain and more of a foundational influence behind the scenes. During the film, the lab where Mindbender and Rex are working gets destroyed, an incident that leaves Rex horribly scarred and sets him on the path to becoming Cobra Commander. As for Mindbender himself, his fate is kind of left up in the air. The explosion suggests he might have died, but later dialogue hints that Rex continued learning from him, implying he survived. I wonder if this Cobra Commander called him Fender Bender. Either way, we never see him again. But what we will keep seeing again and again and again are the toys, because, well, they're plastic. They don't die. Yeah, okay, not my smoothest transition, but whatever. Let's talk toys. It all starts in 1986 with the OG, the Dr. Mindbender, the one that basically defined everything we associate with the character. The mustache, the monocle, the bare chest, the cape. It all starts here. An instantly iconic design courtesy of legendary G.I. Joe toy designer Ron Rudat. It's honestly the only Mindbender you really need. That said, you can't blame Hasbro for trying to mix things up a bit and keep the mind bending moving forward. In 1993, we got the Battle Core version, a much more covered up Mindbender, a little more conservative. I mean, it's fine. While I've got a soft spot for that Lakers purple and gold color scheme, I don't know, even with the oversized spring-loaded weapon, it just doesn't quite have the same pizzazz as the original. It's also worth noting that even if the Origins line ended in 1994, there was artwork and prototypes produced for a new Mindbender had the line continued into 1995. While the only thing Mindbendery about the artwork is the color purple, remove the mask and there's no mistaking who this guy is. It's a cool version, even if it does seem to be a bit too covered up to be Mindbender. And I'm guessing Hasbro felt the same way because by 2002, the Doctor was back, shirtless, caped, and now rocking a bit of Cobra-themed bling just to draw even more attention to that chest. 2004 gave us Valor vs. Venom Dr. Mindbender, looking more like your traditional Doctor, which honestly just doesn't feel right for this dude. But of course, the classics always come back. In 2009's 25th anniversary line, we got that familiar, iconic Mindbender look again, this time with removable web gear. You know, in case you wanted your Doctor even more undressed. Okay, that sounded weird. Sorry. And finally, in 2015, the Collectors Club gave us a winter-themed Mindbender, rocking a surprisingly stylish purple coat. And honestly, not bad. And that pretty much covers the 1/18th scale fender benders. Anyway, for a character this big, it only makes sense to move on to bigger things, specifically the 1/12th scale G.I. Joe Classified series, where Dr. Mindbender made his big debut as a deluxe premium release, a San Diego Comic-Con and Hasbro Pulse exclusive way back in 2022, which basically meant limited quantities, high demand. In short, not easy to get, especially if you were like me and weren't even collecting the classified line at the time, so your only real option was the secondary market. That said, I wasn't exactly losing sleep over it. I figured that Mindbender's way too big of a character to stay locked behind an exclusive forever, so I was perfectly fine playing the long game and waiting for the inevitable reissue. And of course, that plan went completely out the window when I came across someone selling both Mindbender and the equally hard-to-get Serpentor for just little over $100 combined. The King and the Kingmaker? Yeah, that's not a think about it moment. That's a buy now and figure it out later situation. Sure, it did sting a little seeing the retro Mindbender drop not long after and eventually hit clearance, but I'm still perfectly happy with the exclusive version. I mean, that injection tool, 4 individual lab vials, specimen jars with removable lids, a 2-piece skull, a decomposed hand, even a brain, are all pretty cool, even if inevitably they all ended up in a Ziploc back inside a bin somewhere, gathering dust. And speaking of dust, are you familiar with the Marvel mutant Dust? Well, unfortunately, I don't have a video on her, but I do have one on the Joe, Dusty. If you want to know more about this desert trooper traitor, wait, what? I've got his story here. Or if you want my latest story, I've got that over here. Either way, thanks for watching, and I hope to hear from you in the comments below. Do you like walking around in public bare-chested? Go ahead and tell me your story.